Hey students, so today we are going to discuss the topic of classification and scientific names. So, who was Carl Linnaeus? Carl Linnaeus, 1707 to 1778, was a Swedish botanist, zoologist, and physician. Linnaeus decided to tackle the problems of how to define, classify, and name living organisms. So basically, he was a Swedish scientist who worked as a plant expert, which is you can say botanist, zoologist, which means animal expert, and a physician, which means doctor. And his goal was to decided to solve a big problem in science, like how to clearly define groups and name all living things so that scientists everywhere could understand each other. Okay? So, what is an organism? A single living thing, like it can be plant, animal, or single cell life form. Okay, so an organism is simply a single living thing. Like it can be any animal, any plant, or even a tiny single cell like form, which is you can say bacteria also. Okay, so in 1732, Linnaeus went to Lapland, which is the northern part of Finland, on a research expedition. While there, he observed the living organisms around him, took samples of plants, collected data, and recorded his findings. Linnaeus began to consider the idea of grouping living organisms based on what could be observed as shared common traits. So basically, he studied the living things there, collected plant samples, and wrote down everything he saw. Okay? And this trip made him realize that living things could be grouped together based on features they share. Okay? In 1763, he wrote The System of Nature, which explained his method. There have been some adjustment to the system over time, but much of the foundation was set by Linnaeus and has become known as Linnean taxonomy. Okay, so the system Linnaeus devised was primarily determined by a hierarchy of organisms. So, what is hierarchy? Yes, the hierarchy of the living organisms determines its ranking. The more powerful it is, the higher its taxonomic ranking or genus. Okay, so basically, they are saying that a hierarchy is a system where things are arranged in order of rank, importance, or power. Like you can say a ladder from top to bottom. Okay, so, and in taxonomy, Linnaeus used a hierarchy to rank living organisms. In his view, back then, the more powerful or important an animal group seemed, the higher its ranking. Okay? So, try putting these animals group into a hierarchical order with the most important or powerful at the top of the list. Will it be the same as Linnaeus? Like you have to do this with yourself. And this is how Linnaeus ordered them. Like the first come mammals, birds, amphibians, fish, insects, and worms. Okay? So, what is taxonomy? Taxonomy is equals to classifying and naming things. In biology, taxonomy is a classifying and naming of living organisms into related groups. In other words, sorting of the world. So basically, taxonomy simply meaning classifying or sorting and naming things. And in biology, it is a science of sorting the world's living organisms into related groups so they are easy to study. Okay? So, taxonomy is a one-stop shop for all the information you need to know about a living organisms divided into taxonomic categories. It is a hierarchical system which starts at the broadest category with the highest number. The categories become more precise and the numbers in each group drops as the levels progress. So, basically, taxonomy works like an upside down pyramid, moving with general to specific. Okay, general means that broad or large groups, and specific means small and precise groups. As you move down the levels, the groups get smaller, and the number of organisms in each group of drops. Okay, so so the 7 levels from top to bottom, which is you can say from general to specific. The first one is kingdom, the second one is phylum, the third one is class, the fourth one is order, the fifth one is family, the sixth one is genus, and the seventh one is species. So just use a sentence. Like it's an easy tip to remember that you have to remember this sentence like King Philip came over for good soup. Like King, K stands for kingdom, P stands for Philip or phylum. King Philip came, C, over, order, for, which is family, good, for genus, S, which is species or soup. So you have to remember this sentence so you can easily categorize this. Like King Philip came over for good soup. So here's an example of the taxonomic classification of a line. So kingdom, Animalia, phylum or data, class, Mammalia, order, which is carnivore, and family, which is Felidae. And the next one is genus, which is Panthera. And the next one is species, which is Leo. Okay? So the next one is scientific name. So Linnaeus basically gave every living thing a sample, two-part scientific name using its genus and species. Okay? The last two levels of classification, which is genus and species. Okay, so to keep it simple, Linnaeus had the idea to give each organisms a two-part Latin scientific name made up of the genus and species, which is the last two parts of the taxonomic categories. He wanted to make sure that no two living organisms had the same name, so there was no confusion. Okay, so the rule was that no two living things can have the exact same name, so there's no confusion at all. Okay, for example, we have Panthera leo, which is Panthera is a genus, always starts with a capital letter. Okay, and Leo is a species, always small letter, like this. Okay, Panthera is a genus and Leo is a species. Okay, and why use Latin? Because it's a dead language. Like in Linnaeus' time, Latin was not used as an official language by any country because it did not belong to any single country. It was a perfect for a global naming system. The name is exactly the same no matter where you are in the world. Okay? So the next one is kingdom. The broadest or highest level of classification is kingdom. This level contains the most organisms. The relationship between the organisms that share the kingdom is very loose. So basically, the kingdom is the broadest and highest level of classification on the slide. Okay, so the rule is that it contains the most organisms, but they are only loosely related to each other. For example, you can say a fly and a whale are both in the animal kingdom. Okay, most scientists agrees that there are 6 kingdoms in total. Okay, so the first one is Animalia. Over 1 million species from insects to whales, like over 1 million different species. It includes everything from tiny insects to massive whales. Okay, so the next one is Archaebacteria, which is single celled organisms only found in extreme environments like hot boiling water, thermal vents, and places where there's no oxygen or high acid. So basically, archaebacteria are simple single-celled organisms. They only live in extreme environments where most things die, like boiling water, deep ocean vents, or places with zero oxygen. Eubacteria, more complex single-celled organisms, like they have a different chemical makeup and are everywhere. They can help bacteria used to make yogurt or harm bacteria that may you sick. So eubacteria are, you can say that the more complex single-celled organisms, they are everywhere around us. Some are helpful and some are harmful. Like the bacteria used to make yogurt are helpful, and the bacteria that makes you sick are the harmful. So the next one is protist, which is complex cell organisms. They include all microscopic organisms that are not bacteria, animals, plants, or fungi. Plankton is a protist. Okay. So the next one is fungi, multicellular organisms. Like they have multiple cells. They include things like mushrooms, mold, and mildew. Plantae, which are plants over 2000 over 2 lakh 50,000 species from moss to large trees. Okay. And some scientists believe there should be a seventh kingdom for viruses. What do you think? So the next one is phylum. Each kingdom is divided into phyla. Phyla is a plural term for phylum. These are less broad than a kingdom but are organized by general characteristics. Okay, so basically every kingdom is broken down into smaller, more specific groups called phyla. Organisms in a phylum share general physical characteristic or body plans. For example, the animal kingdom alone has more than 30 different phyla. Okay. In the animal kingdom, there are more than 30 phyla. Too many to list here. Okay, here are the couple of examples, which is phylum Chordata. These include all living organisms that have a backbone or spinal cord. Humans are included in this phylum. Okay, and phylum Arthropoda, which is this phylum includes insects, spiders, and other animals with segmented bodies such as worms, ants, and flies. Arthropods have their skeletons on the outside of their bodies, for example, crayfish. Okay. So the next one is class. Each phylum is divided further into classes. This further refines similarities within the group. So class is basically, you can say that each phylum is divided into even smaller, more closely related groups called classes. And this level groups animals that share much more specific similarities with each other. Okay, which is, you can say that phylum Chordata, and it categorized into birds, mammals, and reptiles. Okay, so the next one is order. Each classes is divided into smaller groups called orders. There's some disagreement amongst scientists at this level. Orders may differ depending on the scientific source. So basically, each class is divided into even smaller groups called orders. Okay, and scientists sometimes disagree on exactly how to sort things at this level. So different textbooks might show slightly different orders. Okay, so here we have two examples of order, which is the first one is Lepidoptera, is the order of moths and butterflies, and carnivore is an order within mammalia that is distinguished by having powerful jaws and teeth that can stab, tear, and eat flesh. They include animals like cats, dogs, bears, and other. Okay. So the next one is family. By this stage of the hierarchy, the different characteristics of living organisms are becoming more specific. So there are more family groups to choose from. Consequently, there's disagreement amongst scientists about which family in animal or plant might belong to. Sources will vary, so you often need to find the best consensus from a range of opinions. Okay, so basically, orders are divided into even smaller, more specific groups, which we call families. And how it works, like at this stage, the traits of living things are very specific, meaning there are a lot of different family groups to choose from. Okay, because it gets so detailed, scientists sometimes argue about which family a specific animal or plant belongs to. Okay, so here are some examples of family groups, which is the dog, Canidae, cats, Felidae, owls, Strigidae, frogs, which you can say Renidae, humans are Hominidae, and bees are Apidae. Okay, so the next one is genus. The genus may only have one or two animals in it. If they have the same genus, this means they are closely related. So basically, a family is split into even smaller groups called a genus, which you can say. And how it works, like a genus is a very tight, specific group. Sometimes it contains only one or two types of animals. And the rule is that if two organisms share the exact same genus, it means they are incredibly close, related, and share nearly identical body features. For example, the genus of these two animals, like dog and wolf, okay, they both belong to the genus which we can say Canis. Because they share this genus name, we know they are close cousins in the animal kingdom. Okay, so the next one is species. The species is the most basic level of taxonomy. A genus is made of many different species. Species are a group of organisms that have similar features that are unique to them, similar form and structure, and similar habitats. So basically, the species is the most basic and bottom level of taxonomy. And the rule is that a single genus is made up of many different individual species, and organisms in the same species have features unique to them, the same basic form and structure, and similar habitats. Okay? Species can also have subspecies. We know so much more about the world around us than Carl Linnaeus did in the 18th century, that new biological discoveries are being made all the time. Consequently, new subspecies need to be classified and named. This means that sometimes a living organism may have a three-part name to show it has slightly different characteristics to its relative. Okay, so today we know much more than Linnaeus did in the 18th century. Scientists keep making new discoveries, but sometimes an animal has slight difference from its close relatives. To show this, we classify them further into a subspecies and give them a three-part scientific name. Okay, for example, here are of the 9 subspecies of the leopards. Okay, Pantheria pardus pardus is an African leopard. Pantheria pardus saxicolor is a Persian leopard, and Pantheria pardus orientalis is an Amur leopard. Okay?